before we started recording. Thank you again for taking the time to talk to us, Jeff. Been a big fan of your work since you got like 2 or 3 podcasts here on Strength Coach Network, and you're on, I think, both the fundamentals courses. For those of our listeners and members that are on this call, kind of introduce your background and kind of who you are and, the athletes and population you're working with now.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Moyer, DC Sports Training owner, going on 10 years, approaching the 10-year mark here in January, which is pretty fucking nuts because it still feels like I'm new to this. It's crazy how time flies. But yeah, I've been down here in Pittsburgh for 10 years, originally from upstate New York. Before I was here, I worked at a sports medicine orthopedic practice as a continuing, like a return to play type of guy, working with ACTs and PTs. I also did a lot of stuff with the orthos, questioning the clients and doing all the kind of pre interview stuff for the orthos, and then also sitting on surgeries and recording that, which is pretty interesting. So doing a lot of stuff kind of the medical side, which was a bit eye-opening for better for worse. And then before that, I was coaching college football for 4 years, both as a physical preparation coach, but also as a skills coach. So as a wide receiver, special teams, assistant offensive coordinator, video coordinator. You coach at the D3 level.
Did you tackle people too? Were you tackling people and bringing out the water?
Not at Hamilton. They didn't allow that at the time at that school. But yeah, man. So just wore a lot of hats there. That was pretty cool being in the NCAA level, seeing that. And then yeah, I'm not going to go any further because no one really gives a shit. But yeah, it's really Hamilton that really kind of got me into this anyways, man. When I got to Hamilton, I was introduced to the head strength coach who'd been there for 30 to 50 years. He'd been there forever. Coach 80, and Coach 80 he was Tommy Myslinski, Coach Mize, high school teacher and football and track coach. So everything we did really came from Tommy Mize and Buddy Morris at the time. And so that's really like where I got my intro to the world of physical preparation, was Westside Barbell and Elite FTS, because this was 2006, right when they were still kind of writing and doing things. And Elite FTS was the shit. Every Friday they put out their articles, and we'd all sit around and wait till they came out, and then we'd always read the Q&As with those guys, and Bob the Anger Strength Coach's blog, and the Thinkers blog, and all that stuff, man. That's really when I kind of got my real start, so to speak. But
how have you been able to blend all of that together then, from what you've learned? Like you said, it's been 10 years and you still kind of feel like you're figuring it out. How have you been able to iterate and keep going through the different processes?
Well, it's been 10 years here at DC Sports, doing this, again, whatever title you want to call me, strength and conditioning coach, physical preparation coach. That's been about 15, 16 years. It's an evolutionary process. I try not to be stuck in any one way. I was in that West Side Elite FTS way, and fuck Olympic lifting. You know what I mean? Because we power lift, and we drag sleds, and we push prowlers, and we do that stuff. And then you start seeing the pros and you see the cons to that, right? We had a lot of injuries. We got a lot of kids stronger, but not many kids got faster, and we went 2-6 for 4 years straight. So I didn't see improved strength of athletes and improved wins. And then you start listening more to Buddy and James and Tommy then, and you're hearing more Charlie Francis stuff. So you start going down the track avenue, which I have a track and field background, ran it in high school, also ran it in college. So you start going down that rabbit hole, and again, one thing just leads to another, but for me, I really try, whether I do or not, but I try to not have a closed mind to anything. I try to have an open mind to everything works, just nothing works forever, and not everything works for everybody. And so trying to just keep that in mind with things. So do I still do some Elite FTS West Side stuff? Sure, absolutely. It's kind of in my blood at this point. Certified West Side Barbell, for whatever the hell that means. I was the 11th. I have my certification somewhere around here. I was the 11th person to get certified. And then, you know, it's always there, but then just trying to expand. I mean, what West Side really did, and then Elite FTS and James the Thinker Smith and stuff really did, was open my eyes to there's a whole world out there. And strength conditioning's, even though it's new, it's still been highly studied a long time ago by people much smarter than I. And maybe we should look back at our history first to know, in order to learn your history before you know where to go looking forward. So that's kind of the approach I've always taken, is let's try to trace things back to its original idea, the context of its use, and who and what it was meant for.
And going off of that, what would you say is like your genesis of it, and to the younger listeners out there, where would you be pointing them in that direction?
Well, the genesis, I studied, so I don't have a degree in this field, which is one of the catch-22s of this fucking field, is that anyone can be a strength and conditioning coach, but I am also that anyone because I don't have a degree in the field. I was a social studies teacher. And so for me, the genesis has always kind of been naturally, let's trace things back. So, you know, I'm learning West Side, Louis talking Russians, conjugates, Russians, you know, the Dynamo Club, 1972, the Dynamo Club, Russians. So, okay, I'm researching that. Obviously, you're pointed to super training. So then you start reading that. Okay, well, who's Verkhoshansky? Who's Mel Sif? So you trace that, you know, I trace that back to who are those guys. And it's always been one thing, tracing things back. You know, I've said it before, for me, anytime I get a new book, which is a terrible habit I have of buying new books almost weekly, one of the first places I go is the back. I want to see the citations of things. I want to know where people learned their stuff from. And so like one of the first books I was told to read was The Science and Practice of Sports Training. That's one of the things, one of the first books Louis Simmons told me to read. So I fucking read it. And so, okay, who's Zatsiorsky? Who's Mark Ladish? You know what I mean? So, okay, who are these guys? Where did they learn from and stuff like that? So that's just always been a byproduct. So for me, I don't have one particular history book that I would say. Just kind of trace, like if you have someone that you whose nuts you swing from, find out where they learn from, right? And then find out where they learn from, and just try to take things back. And that's, to me, you'll find in my studies and things, my research, it kind of always comes back to just a small crowd of people, all of these ideas and stuff. So whatever is new now, whoever your people are chasing now on Instagram, try to trace things back. It's usually going to come around full circle. I have yet to see really new things. There's a prominent speed coach right now that I'm watching his seminars on that I purchased. I'm not going to say his name, but he's talking about these ideas as if they're new. And he's getting a lot of his information from the current research now of an unnamed researcher in sprint biomechanics. And it's not new. The fucking problem is the shit's not new. Like it's like people aren't doing their homework, and it's really sad. Because these are people that I do look up to and I really respect, but it's sad that no one's doing their fucking homework to see that, hey man, this shit's already been done. So like this sprint coach is talking about these ideas and coming up with these exercises that, like, bro, this shit's been talked about for 30, 40 years. Like, I don't know. So on one hand, I want to laugh, poking the bear, I want to cry. So it's hard.
Was that the post that you were talking about? Well, was that the post you were talking about with the guy with his back extended and he was doing, you know, hip flexion with some sort of...
That's one of them. So that's not particular. That's one guy. That's not particularly who I'm talking about at the moment. The other, this other guy, again, I'm not going to say any names. I know Kira's totally cool with name dropping and shit like that. But I do like this person. I've been to their house and stuff like that. I've been out to dinner with this person. I've spoken at their seminars. He's a good person. It's not anything about him. It's just, I don't know. People just don't do their homework. Yeah. So that person who you're referring to on an internet post on Instagram, creating this exercise, again, he didn't create it. He's copying it, but he's acting like he created it. And we got into it on Instagram, him and I, because he didn't give the credit to where it came from. And the problem is he doesn't see that, hey man, you have 200,000 followers So when you post something, people think you fucking created it. That's kind of what Instagram does, indirectly, whether that's your intent or not. And all I'm saying is just give credit to where credit's due. If you're getting your exercise and stuff and doing your homework, just say where you got it from, rather than pretending you created shit. But again, you're getting me down a rant, Justin, and we don't have any beers yet, so I can't fucking do this right now.
I was specific, like one of the reasons I did want to get you on was listening to you and Jay talk at CVASP in Pittsburgh, where you something similar, where you were talking about where people can get it wrong and they can confuse some of what Doc was doing and taught you and Jay and the things you guys learned from, without again going down a rant and down a rabbit hole or spiral that way. What would be some of the things that you've seen misled with some of those teachings and work versus like, hey, this is how it's really done well and this is how you can incorporate it in your training properly?
Well, I'll do my best not to rant, but like right now in the world of, let's say, sprint biomechanics, right, thigh angular velocity is a popular phrase that's getting thrown around. All right, so we're looking at the scissoring action. So if I'm using another famous strength coaches or speed coaches words, he calls it scissors. Another coach calls it thigh angular velocity. It's all the same shit. But what is that, right? And now how do we train that? And so people look at Doc stuff and they're like, that's too simple. And this is just coming from conversations I've had with other coaches about Doc. It's too simple. It can't be that easy. It's got to be more. And so then they start coming up with these, they create their elaborate exercises. But now when newer research comes out saying exactly what the Russians showed and exactly what Dr. Yes has been talking about in all his books, and now they're coming up with exercises that resemble exactly what they're originally talking about. So for thigh angular velocity, for instance, well, it's the knee drive. Dr. Yes has been talking about for years. It's knee drive and paw back, right? It's the thighs, the thigh flexion, right? Hip flexion. But where is it trained? The hip contracts from behind the body to drive forward, right? But we're talking about that. Well, it's right in the biomechanics world. We're talking about, well, it's how fast the thighs scissor. Well, okay, now how do you train that? And that's exactly what Doc's been doing. So the knee drive exercise is one of those exercises people just kind of like poo-pooed because it's too fucking easy. Well, it's exactly training thigh angular velocity. And then same with the paw back. It's that foot coming forcefully back and down, attacking underneath to get the foot to land underneath the hips. And that's where the glutes and the hamstrings are used. But people, again, poo-pooed it because it was too simple or it doesn't resemble something. But now it's coming back around. Well, okay, that's very important because it's how fast that thigh comes back and down and attacks the ground. And that's where we apply force. It's that initial contact where force is applied, not over the extent of the hip extending from behind the body. It's that initial contact in front of the ground. And so people, for some reason, just say Doc stuff is too easy, or they just, I don't know if it's because he's just a grumpy old man, which I feel I'm becoming now, so I apologize. But they just turn him off for whatever reason. And it's listen, like, yeah, I get it. But if you can bypass that and actually listen to the substance of what he's talking about, there's fucking genius there. And that's what the current research is showing, is the genius of what he's already talking about, what the Russians already talked about. So I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah. And would you say the same thing could be said for, the 1x20 program, and the fact that people think it is too simple, and, again, you can work those specific isolative actions that he talked about with, moderate load over time. So that way you can learn that neural pattern.
There's the 1x20. Well, again, the original idea, it's just a loading parameter. It's the exercise selection that matters most. Where people missed the boat originally, and maybe it was just because of how myself and other people talked about it. Originally, it's low dosing. Yes, it's low stress, building over time, accumulation, blah, blah, blah. But it's exercise selection that matters most. And that's the point Doc always tried to hit home with the 1x20. 1x20 is just the load scheme to the exercises. It's the exercises themselves that matter the most. So for instance, the knee drive, that matters more. So rather than just doing a forward lunge or something like that, which is a good exercise, but it's doing these exercise selections, the hip rotation for throwers, medial rotation for throwing athletes, pronation, supination of the shoulders with the strength bar. It's those exercises that matter more than just doing 20 reps of a tire flip or battle ropes or payloft presses, right? It's the exercise selection that matters most. Now, the 1x20 gets misconstrued also because people think it's just for novice athletes. But the thing is, and I'm going to try to collect some data from myself, but from other coaches that I know that work with professional athletes, it's not just for that. I've actually found 1x20 loading works just as well, if not better, with college and professional athletes. And my hypothesis is because it's almost like a sigh of relief for their fucking nervous system, because they're so used to getting their ass beat that their nervous system just can't breathe. It's just constantly getting it pounded. Now, all of a sudden, we kind of give it a low dose and it can just respond better. Right now, it can actually allow the athlete to be robust and bouncy and all these things. So I have had my college athletes, when they come back to me after, working, during the school year at college, all of a sudden we go 1x20 and now things start rising really fast. We've had kids put on 16 inches in broad jumps in a matter of a month, just by 1x20, nothing crazy. I've had kids drop from a laser 148 to a laser 14 in a matter of 3 weeks in 1x20, not doing anything crazy. Just almost, I feel like just letting their nervous systems just kind of breathe. So that's one of the big things for me is people get so caught up with that. It's general and it's more of a principle. It's a matter of low dosing. So you don't have to do 1x20, just go 1 set of 10. I don't fucking care. Just do less of what you're doing is what I hope 1x20 is trying to ultimately teach people. It's just, you're doing 3x5, just go by 2x5. You're doing 5x5, go 3x5, right? Just do half of what you're doing. And I'm willing to bet you'll see better results and you'll get better response from the athletes. There's a coach out in California that I've done consulting with. I've been out there a couple times, named Scott Prohaska, that works with a ton of professional athletes. Kier has been out there with him. A ton of professional athletes, and he'll tell you his results that he's gotten with pro athletes, hockey, baseball, professional football athletes, and the response they've gotten. When I went out there, not this past February, but 2 Februarys ago, I got to work with Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence and a bunch of pro prospect guys, and just talking to them, interacting like, hey, how's it going with training stuff? The response is they say they feel better. They just don't feel beat up, and Trevor Lawrence is coming from Clemson. Which from what I know, their program was more of a West Side base and stuff. So now just giving them things to let their nervous system respond. So that's, I guess, one of the other big things about 1x20, not to get too far down that hole.
Would you say that the issue in the current trend, again, just in your idea, I know you don't know everything in terms of what people are doing, but would you project that because people don't know the past, they don't have that same fundamentals of the basic behind why people were doing what they were doing back in the day? Or is it a combination of that with trying to look impressive on the current social media trend? Is it, maybe one more than the other, or would you say it's probably equally for both?
I think it's both, but I think honestly, and this is kind of where I've been in my thought process, so that's a great question. I think people don't have a long-term plan. I think their long-term plan is just solving the issue that's in front of them right now. And then once we've solved that, okay, we'll figure out how to solve the next problem. You know what I mean? So for instance, you'll get coaches who do right now, okay, you'll get high school senior or college freshman. Okay, we'll force velocity profile them, whatever, or we'll do jump tests or whatever. Okay, they're deficient in this. Let's do a block of this, and then we'll retest, and then we'll see what they're deficient in next. And it's just always like this. They look at things in 4 weeks, or they look at things in 8 weeks. And I just don't know many coaches that talk about the long term. So for me, what is the cost of doing business? So anytime I see someone's program or I'm talking to a coach, great. Someone's doing, I know, no particular name. There's a gym out near Philly that I was just introduced to that is getting kids to jump out the roof, and they're running fast and all this stuff. And then when I find out what they're doing from a training, they're doing a West Side barbell. So they're getting freshmen and sophomore in high school doing max effort, sumo deadlifting and stuff like that, which I think the sumo deadlift is a great exercise. But what is the cost of doing business, right? In 2-3 years, now what are you going to have to do, right? When their nervous system's kind of hardened, what's the next thing you got to do to get them to go fucking more? You got to do super maximal lifting now. You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to do to these kids? So what is the next thing? So there's coaches now who have 1080 sprints, which is a fucking great device. And they're doing overspeed training with freshmen, sophomores in high school. Like, what, at some point, you know what I mean? Like, the body's going to get used to that. So then what's going to be next? You can start pulling them from a car. Like, what do we get? At some point, like, what we got to start doing? There's going to have to be something more. And so that's just kind of that's the question I always have in the back of my head when I look at it, talk to any coaches, is what is I'm trying to see, what is their long-term plan? Do they have a long-term plan? Or is it just kind of, let's fix the issue right now and then address the next issue when it arises?
Well, Jeff, that's sort of like the, I think we've mentioned it before, and is not something new for the ones that haven't heard it yet. It's like the toothpaste analogy. So when you get someone that hasn't done much work, you thought you're great because whichever direction or pressure you squeeze with, you'll get something out. It'd be like, I'm a great coach. The kid is like 14 or 15 or whatever. But then again, you'd be like, are you thinking selflessly in his whole term athlete development, or you just want your money and results now because you have a business? I mean, you can't really blame someone for actually having a balanced those. I mean, there's an ethical thing that, you know, we can discuss, and probably everyone here or most of the people we've invited would share this thing. But I can see how someone would have, hey, I have a month for a trial for a kid. I have to pick up a business. I mean, probably not going to try to kill him my first session, but how do you sell it? Like, the parents already
100%.
Yeah, you know, there's social media bombarding people with results. Like, it's a bigger problem, isn't it?
No, 100%. It's definitely, because for sure, it is parent, sometimes athlete driven. You know, it's kind of that adage of like, I want a pill just to solve it. I want something fast. I don't want to fucking think, and I don't want to have to take my time with it if I can get it right now. And I do get that 100%. I'm in the private sector, so I do get that. Because we're always having to sell another package or sell something. For sure.
Another month of subscriptions.
For sure. Yeah, but so again, you can't necessarily blame the coach, but then, you know, it's a bigger thing, and I definitely think we need more beers for that to get down that hole. But because it is it's a systematic thing. But I don't know. Yeah, and then the internet doesn't help any. But
yeah, we were discussing in the Cheeky Midweeky that might be published soon. We never know. We have like random publishings, but a particular day, and we were talking about like, when you're like process oriented and you have all these good messages and you spend your time educating kids and they get the message, then they get this like, get bombarded with quick fixes everywhere, and it's hard. Like, everything you've done in years, they, you know, if I have someone like who's an hypochondriac and like believes that, you know, colored tapes are gonna cure their hamstrings. I mean, they're tempted, like, oh, this is gonna protect me. It's like voodoo magic, and they'll just you know, neglect the RDLs or whatever they say they're doing, or your program with glute and hip extensions, and be like, but the tape's here. So it's tough. It's so easy to lose them, isn't it?
It is. I would definitely add the tape with the RDLs though. That would be me. I mean, I'm part of that. I got the colored glasses. I got all that stuff. But no, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, fuck social media, but I mean, we need it, and I get it, and pardon my French, but yeah, 100%. Their trainers got kinesio tape on them, so you know, we shouldn't be doing this because they got the special tape on, so they're good. But again, man, that's a maddening thing, and one of the reasons why I hate this industry. But
how would you say, you know, strength and conditioning coaches can, you know, switching the gear a little bit, how can we stay in our lane, quote unquote, but still, you know, be involved in that other aspect of sport that is ambiguous, and it is the OODA loop, and it is things where a position coach might say, hey, you know, you're not in your lane anymore. How does that balance strike as a strength and conditioning coach in your opinion?
So before we move forward, I wasn't having a go at the tape. It's just the first thing that came through.
Oh, it's all good to know. No.
They were no with you, but like, I'm thinking like some physios might watch this and be like, they're tape haters, like game no tape, you know, like it's not it, but just kids like want to get wrapped like mummies. I told one of my players, it's like, you're like 10 centimeters of tape away from being a mummy. Like, can you just work out and do like stuff? We can tape if you want. I don't mind. I mean, it surely works. If it's a placebo, if it physically, we're not going to discuss it. But Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. But yeah, when I
Oh
think
no,
of Jeff
I'm
Moyer, I think performance vision. That's the first time I heard about you, and
cool.
that's what
Well, thanks,
Justin's
man.
question was.
No, yeah, I'm not knocking tape. It's just no, I completely understand where you're going with it. So for me, I guess you have to find what your lane is, because to me, overall, and I guess this is more the James Smith in me, man. I think our lane is far more wider than some people think, but I also have to check with who you're working with and your situation. So being at the NCAA level, going back to when I was in college, yeah, I can't do a lot of technique stuff because the college coach would get pissed off with it. But then some coaches, when you have that conversation, they're totally cool with it. So what's his name? Zach Durant, or what's his name down at TCU that spoke at CBS. Yeah. He's talking about doing throwing mechanics, because he's allowed that. He has that. He's had those conversations. You know what I mean? So now that's widened his lane. And I think that's where it should be personally. But I don't ever think things should be black and white, right? I have said this 1,000 times. Only Sith Lords work in absolutes. Quote Star Wars. You know what I mean? I think it's far more gray than it is black and white. So even in the PT side, even work at the college level with ACTs and stuff like that, people get very possessive over that. I think it's far more gray. I just rehabbed a kid's wrist and a girl's lower back today, who both went to chiros. One chiro said the kid tore his ligament in his wrist. We got his pain from a 7 down to a 1 in one session. And I didn't fucking do anything crazy. So to me, that's not a tear, you dumb chiro. But anyways, so I think, but my point is, like, if I can do that, or at least if I can help the chiro open up some things and have conversations, I think that's where it should be. I don't think our industry should be such weight room and then coach takes it outside or like that. I haven't read James' stuff in a while, but I know he's all for, like, there shouldn't necessarily be a strength coach. The sport coaches should know strength and conditioning type of thing and should be able to blend it. And I think it should be very much that. I do skill work with my soccer team. Meaning we use soccer balls and we do small sided games, because I've worked with soccer and I've studied that, and in the perception action side of things should very much blend. So you mentioned the sports performance division side of things. So, like, for instance, the transfer of training with Bondarchuk, it should be the very much same as far as perception and action. So I shouldn't do just eye training in the weight room and then they go practice. There should be a blend. It should be a nice transition of things, and that's how I think all of it should be. So I don't know, but it's obviously dependent on your situation. If you're in the college setting, which I've been before, if you're at the high school setting and you don't have those relationships and you don't have those conversations, then yeah, it's hard to do technique stuff. And if you have, like, for me, when I get baseball athletes in here, I'll always ask, do they have a pitching coach? Because I'm not trying to step on any toes. Even though I think the pitching coaches here are wrong, I'm not going to say that to the kid and I'm not going to step on their toes. I'm just going to try to reinforce what the coach is saying and see if I can't work around some of that to bring out that more. Because all of a sudden I don't want to be butt heads and they're paying for this pitching coach, they're paying for me. Obviously they're here to get better at pitching, so I'm going to lose out on that battle anyways. You know what I mean? So I try to work around that. I hope that answers your question.
No, that does. And I think you can, kind of step out of your lane by doing what you talked about with the visual, perception stuff, because going back to what Zach said at CVAS, how can we make it better, right? Like it all goes back to that conversation. Hey, how can I help you, not change what you're doing, but make what you're doing better and help you get a better athlete at the end of it?
Yeah. So I worked with the boys lacrosse team this past year, and that's the conversation I was fortunate to have with the head coach. Is he's very much a closed drill, cones, here's your change of direction, here's your stuff, and I try to open them up to more in perceptual, actual type of thing, constraints led things, and it's just going to open up and make his job now when they get onto the season that much easier, which he said it did. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to work on these little things anymore, because a lot of the drills and a lot of things we did kind of already taught that indirectly. And so, but I was fortunate to have that conversation and have an open-minded coach. Again, not a lot of sport coaches are that open-minded, regardless of what they say. Yeah.
Without giving away, any of your, things that you've, whether as again, you said you consulting, so without giving away any of the, information that people pay you for as a consultant, what are some of the, easy low hanging fruit in terms of the visual vestibular, system training stuff that you do? Because like Fernando said, like that is one of the first things that people think of when, people know you, what you do.
Cool.
Yeah.
As long as people know, yeah, hey, the Jack Sparrow, but you have heard of me. The easiest thing, man, is checking convergence. That's something you and I went through.
Yep.
That to me, that comes more from neurology, especially posturology, than it does more the sports vision side of things. Most optometrists will check convergence. Convergence is the ability for both. I don't know if this is auditory or just an audio or a visual podcast, but for those that are listening, both eyes to turn in, going cross-eyed essentially. But when most people do it, they look down at their nose, right? And they say they're going cross-eyed, which they are in a sense, but we want to see full convergence where their eyes are meeting kind of more in the middle of their nose. And a lot of times if they do get eye exams, which most athletes don't, which to me is crazy, the optometrist will stop maybe 6 to 12 inches in front of their eyes to make sure the athlete can follow, and then they'll stop. They don't go all the way to their nose. But in the world of functional neurology, there's a phrase, midline before periphery, midline stability before peripheral stability. And so one of the most midline things you can have is full convergence of your eyes. And the muscles that are involved and the nerves that innervate those muscles, all related to postural muscles and things like that. So full convergence of the eyes has an array of positive effects on posture. Now, whether you believe in static posture or not is another story. But for me, if it doesn't look right, it doesn't fly right, to quote Buddy Morris. And so we first have to have posture before we do other things. Posture doesn't always dictate pain, but posture can dictate function for sure. But full convergence. So there's 2 ways to do it. There's a fixation way and there's a saccade way. So fixation is take a pencil and watch the tip of the pencil and bring it all the way to your nose, and have someone do this to you and see if both eyes turn in, or does one eye turn in better than the other? Is one a little slower to turn in? See if there's a difference. What's interesting with these tests is if you find an athlete who commonly has one-sided pain, this is what I found. Let's just say ankle, shoulder, hip, right? Just the right side kind of sucks. When you do a convergence test, you usually see it's the right eye that doesn't turn in or does not turn in well. So it's very interesting, the correlations between things. So the fixation one is watching the pencil all the way in. And the second one is where you're kind of staring off. The person holds up the pencil literally at the bridge of their nose. And then you tell them to find the tip of the pencil and you see if they can do it. Most people really suck at that. But convergence is important, not only for posture, but we've got to have depth perception. So a lot of sports, especially baseball, softball, tennis, golf, anything requires accuracy. Depth perception is important. Depth perception is the ability to judge speeds and distance of things. In order to have full depth perception, you have to have binocularity, and you have to have fusion of the eyes. Fusion meaning the information out of both eyes is feeding to the brain. And full convergence is the first place you got to start. So that's kind of the prerequisite to depth perception. And so I would start there. Long story short, start with convergence. It's very simple. You just need a fucking pencil or a finger, and just look at the 2 ways to do it. And then if you see that an athlete has an issue, which a lot do, then you do exercises to bring that up. Now, one of the interesting things about that is not always does doing just eye exercises improve that. In posturology, what you'll find is you have to stabilize the feet, right? So you can't shoot a cannon out of the canoe. So you got to have stable feet. So the way we stabilize the feet is by using postural insoles. Postural insoles are less than 3 millimeters off the ground, but they have a magnet, and it's the placement of those magnets and the frequency of those magnets that will then stabilize the body. So we'll see functional neurology tests such as the Romberg's test, sometimes the Fiduka step test, and then cervical rotation, all improve just by throwing on postural insoles and then doing a couple eye exercises.
You know that people listening to this are gonna like grab their pencil at home and like start turning
Do it.
their heads. Because the first thing I did when you said that, I just started to see if I could cross my eyes. Looked at my
Do it.
nose. I was
Most
like,
people
damn
can't.
it.
Bro, most people can't, which is crazy. And again, what's very fascinating is the more I test people, and we'll see their history of injuries and then test them, it's usually the side of the constant, the chronic pain that they have a divergent eye, which is, I'm telling you, it's not 100% foolproof, but it's pretty spot on as far as that goes. So now chicken or the egg type of thing, but I'm saying I've had a woman with shoulder pain, left shoulder pain, her shoulder hurt. She couldn't really raise her arm. All of a sudden we look at her eyes, left eye goes out. When she does a convergence test, we do left eye exercises, not do any shoulder stuff. All of a sudden the shoulder goes all the way up, shoulder pain went away, and we just did eye exercise. That was it.
Now, as you alluded to
first
earlier,
addressing the brain. Yeah.
As you alluded earlier in the show, you kind of, okay, before you pick up the book, you look to see who they learn from. Where did you start? And then where did you start looking on your journey with any of the neurology, posturology stuff that you're, very able to speak about now?
Twofold. First was the story I told. I tell everyone on how I got into the perceptual side of things, being a Dr. Yes's guy, looking at biomechanics, working with tennis athletes. This one tennis athlete, I'll be real quick with the story. His backhand was always the issue. So we biomechanics shit out of it. We specialize exercises. We perceptual action the fuck out of it. Got it looking great, but then it would still break down in certain circumstances. All of a sudden, a mentor of mine, Ryan Harrison, the son of the late Dr. Bill Harrison, who was the OG of sports vision training, who was a mentor of mine, came out to Pittsburgh, came to the gym and assessed that athlete, and it might have been 20 seconds, said, I bet you he struggles with off-speed shots to his backhand because he's always pulling the ball. He's always going to be out in front. I said, yeah, that's exactly the mechanical issue. How'd you get that? He said his right eye is, I don't know how he came up with the statistics, but he goes, his right eye is 60% weaker and perceives things closer than his left eye. Well, in his backhand, that's the right eye because he's a righty tennis player. And I go, well, holy shit. So his perception was thrown off, his mechanics. So for me, I was like, well, fuck, if I'm a movement guy, I got to understand perception now. So that's where I started just bogging the shit out of Ryan and Dr. Bill Harrison for years. Just bothering. Ryan came out here. I had him host a seminar here for me, which was awesome and very practical. I would email, and I still have phone calls saved on my phone from Dr. Bill. Just really got to know those guys. I got to go out to Cali and see those guys work and meet Dr. Bill before he passed, which was a great honor. And that really opened me up to all that side of the visual side of things. But listen, I'm not going to say I bat 1,000. I don't bat 1,000. Not everyone do I fix their visual issues. So I was like, well, fuck, why is this person not getting better? How come I got this person better and not this person better? What's going on? And so Dan Fichter of Want to Get Faster in Rochester, New York, that's where I'm from. That's my hometown. I became friends with Dan, and he's very much in neurology. And so talking to him started making sense, right? Started learning some of the stuff he's talking about, and that started making sense as far as maybe, hey, that's the issue with some of this stuff. And so during COVID, he said, hey, you got to sign up for this course. He didn't really even tell me what it was about. He just said, you got to sign up for it. It was like $150. It wasn't expensive. And it met every, I think, Wednesday night, 7:00 on Zoom, which was perfect. Okay, cool. Not inexpensive. I can just sit in my house and learn it. And it was the IP Institute hosted by Matt Belay. And on that seminar was 10 NFL strength coaches and all these other people who I knew of. So I was like, oh, this is pretty fucking rad. And Matt started talking about crawling and doing all this weird shit on the ground and rocking. And I was like, man, you got NFL guys. I got high school and some college kids, some pros. I got to get them rocking on the floor. Like, what is this stupid shit?
You talking this
like,
stuff like
lying
on your back and like the head nodding up and down?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So ventral glides and all this stuff. And I'm like, what is this shit? But I kept an open mind. Again, try not to be closed off anything. Went through course 1. And then I, like most things, where did Matt learn that stuff? Okay, Matt learned a lot of it from Dr. Robert Melillo, who's the world's expert in child functional neurology and child neurological development. And then a lot of it came from the world of rhythmic movements therapy. Okay, so I took a rhythmic therapy course. I bought the books. I started buying the Melillo books. I started doing the courses. And that's where I just started learning that, like, I just started tracing things back, and it just started to click. And so for me, there's a deeper reason behind a lot of the issues I wasn't being able to solve. And really, man, what I do now at DC Sports is I just try to solve issues. And it's not that listen, I will never say I'm fucking smart. I'm still the dumb guy on the short bus. But I'm fortunate enough to have met people such as you guys and Kier and Hank and Yosef and Natalia Berkashansky that I have references to now that I can ask questions, the Dr. Bill Harrisons and Ryan Harrisons of the world, right? I've been fortunate enough to have met enough people where I can send out an email or a text or just jump on a call and ask these people questions. And that's where I get my answers. So, one of the big things I try to talk to with interns and any young strength coaches I'm fortunate to talk to is, it's not about what you learn. It's about creating an environment of people around you and a culture around you to then springboard and ask questions, and people that are smarter than you, right? Hang out with people smarter than you. That's counter to that. That's how I was told to meet women, was hang out with guys that were uglier than you. So that's why I was hung out with the linemen, football guys, right? So that way I always look good, right? But anyways, hang out with people smarter than you, because then you fucking get some of the ricochet and you start learning their stuff, man, right? I've talked about with Yosef writing a book, and we just call it being a fly on the wall, and just the conversations I've been able to hear from Natalia and Hank and Dr. Bondarchuk. Just, these offhand conversations at the end of podcasts, at the end of these Skype sessions, just having a beer with them, just learning shit, just like, that's the good stuff, man. That's why CVAS is amazing, because you get to have those and listen to those conversations. I got to go have barbecue food with Bondarchuk in Richmond and just listen to him bitch about shit. Like, that's amazing. That's the good stuff. So for me, it's being able to have people that I can learn from and ask questions, as opposed to I'm the guy that everyone's trying to come to. I don't, fuck that.
Now, as you just talked about the good of the visual stuff, what should any of our listeners that, again, want to be educated and do it right, but maybe see things, what are the things that you see that are, being sold as the visual vestibular training that has, again, taken the wrong turn and is, again, kind of that, like, hey, really, what are we doing here?
Well, one, and I don't mean to necessarily point fingers, but fuck it. The perception and action side of things, well, they're good guys, and and I've spoken at their conference, the Emergence group, with their information on perception and action and movement and constraints-led approach and Bernstein and all that stuff is awesome. Great stuff. But again, anyone, only Sith Lords work in absolutes. So like, it can't just be, you only get your visual training from doing more of that skill, because most people don't know they have a visual issue until it's brought to their attention. So for me, I look at vision training just like I look at sports training. What we do with our athletes, guys, is it's the transfer of training. You got your general, and then we work up to special developmental competitive, right? And only doing perception action stuff is just that special developmental competitive, but it's the other stuff, because general exercises do transfer for certain people, right? You guys have seen that. Getting kids squat numbers up does get them faster, some people. You know what I mean? So for me, getting their eye to converge, all of a sudden get their batting average up. Right. I've had this one kid I worked with almost a year now. He came to me. He literally in the summer hit like 100. Like, that was his high school batting average. It was a fucking 100, which is terrible for high school baseball. All of a sudden we start, and then you look at his eyes, and his eyes don't turn in, and he's got all these things. All we do is we do some primitive reflex stuff. We get his feet stabilized, and we do some convergent stuff. And now the kid's batting 500 this summer. I didn't do anything different. And again, that I can't take full credit. All I'm saying is he says he sees the ball better. You know what I mean? We did general exercise as far as proving that. We didn't do necessarily depth perception stuff. We didn't do any of the other fancy stuff that I get into with the slow the game down and all that. We just worked on something general, and that got him better. So my point is, use all of it, right? You just got to find where that athlete is, or those people are at that time, and that's where you got to work. I think the perception action stuff is awesome, but they poo-poo general strength. They poo-poo the vision stuff, right? Well, again, I just don't know if they're just reading studies. And yes, there's some merit to studies, but as you guys know, you can find a study fucking showing anything.
Yeah, exactly.
I found studies that show vision. I found studies that vision training does work. I found it that it doesn't work. I'd rather go talk to people that are doing it and listen to their results and hear the stories than I would just reading a fucking okay, let's go on PubMed and look up convergence training with high school kids. And okay, does it work? Does it not work? Right? I'd rather hear the stories. And it's usually what most of those studies unfortunately show. It's just one thing. It's never just one thing. Ryan Harrison will show you, okay, we get convergence better. Then we start doing the stereo cards. Then we start shooting wiffle balls. Then we start getting pitch location stuff. Now we got this transfer of training built into the vision training. So for me, use all of it. You got to find where they are. And then the other part is the technology side of things is taking over the vision training. So you got Dynavision, you got FitLights, you got the Rox lights, you got NeuroTracker, you got all these awesome tools, and they're great tools, but they're just tools, right? A lot of times they seem like they act like and they sell that they can cure cancer, but they can't. It's just a fucking tool for certain things. So there's a company that sells their device for $20,000. Bro, it's general vision training. That's all it is. You're staring at a computer screen. It's not three-dimensional. Right. And it's just, they're not really doing their sport. They're just doing things on a fucking board, but it's $20,000. So like, is that worth it? Or would I rather get a 1080? No, I gotta rather get a 1080 for $20,000 or an ARP wave for $20,000. So just be careful when you're looking into these things. And the unfortunate part is, and Ryan Harrison would be a good guy to interview, and he's got stories. These professional teams at the NFL and at the professional level, they rather buy these toys than hire an expert who can come in and individualize a training plan for the visual needs of their athletes. They'd rather buy a Dynaboard or 10 Dynaboards. And then, okay, now we're touching fucking lights and doing this, but it doesn't resemble, locating and recognizing a fucking a curveball.
That's one thing that you said about with this very simply understanding and him feeling confident. That generalness could be the exact same as when, hey, I feel like I'm stronger and you did nothing special. Like you said, you might have trap bar deadlifted somebody and they're like, hey, I feel like my back and my hips and I'm just a stronger person and now I'm a better lineman. That very same general application just with the eyes. That makes sense.
Yeah. And again, if general training didn't work, then we wouldn't necessarily be doing it. If Olympic lifting didn't work, people wouldn't be doing it. And everything has its place. You just got to know, who is it for and do they need it and how much and when and where type of thing. So I think all of it's good. You just got to know how much and when and where. So I have a softball girl that I just had. She's only going to be in 8th grade. She's got great convergence. She's got great stereoscopic vision. We got to do some like high end type of thing now. She's only a middle schooler. You know what I mean? But that's just where she's at. She's fantastic. So I don't need to just keep holding a stick up and doing pencil push-ups and shit now. We're well past that. But that's where she's at, where a kid that's going to be a junior in high school, he can't turn his eyes in for shit. Okay, well, then I got to go back to the drawing board. So it's all, again, going to the person in working with what's in front of you as opposed to having a preconceived notion, right? Let them kind of tell you what they need.
Okay. I want to say thank you for your time. I don't want to keep you much longer. If there's anything that you feel like you're like, hey, I wanted to talk about this, but we didn't bring it up, now would be the time.
Oh man, I told you, man, I was fired up today. That biomechanics stuff is really starting to piss me off.
What about
sorry, guys. It's kind of I feel like Peter Griffin. What grinds my gears? This is kind of one of those things. Well, it's just going into that. And it's just, it is my bias. So I'm aware of my bias, but I'm heavily influenced by Dr. Yesus, right? Anyone that doesn't know me, I've apprenticed under him for 10, 11 years now. And where did he get his info from? One is self-study from him because he has a PhD in biomechanics, but two, a lot of the Russian research. He got to spend time with the Russians. He translated Russian literature. So what I try to, why I get so mad is, again, this prominent strength coach, I'm watching a seminar that I paid good money for, and he gets paid a lot of money to work with professional athletes. And he's doing exercises that he is just acting like he created, but it's all based off of this newer research that is showing what they showed in the 1978. Like, for instance, thigh angular velocity. I mentioned that. The role of the ankles, right? In stiffness of the foot. They talked about that, right? They're like, that's a newer thing, right? Doing isometrics for the feet and all that, which is great. I'm not against it. But the problem is, it's not anything new. I have a research article from 1981 done by Zatsiorsky, who I talked to about it, in his lab, showing the role of the ankle and how much it contributes to force and sprinting and the push off. But now but for some reason, if it's not, the study wasn't done in the last 5 years, or if it wasn't done by Peter Whalen, we're not listening to it. And it's infuriating. Like you can't say you're a historian if you're only looking at the last fucking 5 years of shit. Go back, trace things back, and try to look at everything. That's my rant. That's just where I'm at today. If you catch me tomorrow, it might be about something fucking else. Might be about tape and colored glasses. Probably will be, but that's just been in my in my head all day. Is just how infuriating that is. Try to just do your homework, guys, please.
I mean, and on that, do your homework. It's going to make me, continue to. I've always looked at the references. I haven't done that on a book, but like anytime I want to learn more, like you can go down those ResearchGate rabbit holes by looking into references. So appreciate that. For anybody that has not followed you but heard this podcast, where can they follow you to continue to learn about not doing things that suck?
Oh God. Well, if you follow me on Twitter, I just like things. I don't tweet. I'm not a tweeter. I use it more for an answering machine than anything. Instagram is, I guess, where I'm on the most. I don't post much. I'm trying to get over that. I don't know if it's because I'm 40, and I just have that issue with social media. But I got to start doing more with social media. But Instagram is usually I'm most Facebook, whatever, DC Sports Training. You could just email me, man. I'm an open book. I only have a business. I'm only here. I only have been fortunate to meet people like you guys because of people that were kind enough to give me their time and answer my questions and things like that. So I love paying it back. I love helping young coaches. There's a lot of bullshit out there. And sometimes having a BS meter is more important than kind of all the X's and O's and all the science, just being able to differentiate bullshit from not. And if anything, that's what the mentors and the smarter people that I get to hang out with has really helped me with. They've increased my bullshit meter. So yeah. But anyways, Instagram, I guess, is where I party the most.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Jeff. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. It's great having you.
Thanks, boys. All right, you stop.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.